Welcome to the Danny Clinkscale Reasonably Irreverent podcast. Insightful and witty commentary, probing interviews, and detours from the beaten path.
Welcome to Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. The word legend is tossed around far too much, but I feel very comfortable in using it to describe Bob Davis, a native Kansan who became synonymous with the University of Kansas and their sports programs as much as anyone this side of James Naismith and Wilt Chamberlain. Bob Davis was the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks for over 30 years. Yes, he had opportunities to go elsewhere to do national things, but in the end, he liked his role as the Jayhawks announcer and in bringing the people of Kansas his excitement and his passion and his level of excellence. He worked his way up the old-fashioned radio way and, in fact, didn't get his dream job at KU until he was almost 40 years old. Starting in 1984, Kansas Jayhawk fans have had the pleasure of hearing Bob Davis call countless great basketball games and many, well, not-so-great football games. But win or lose, the same kind of passion and excellence that he brought to the table was evident game after game after game. He was the 14-time Kansas Broadcaster of the Year, an absurd total. He's a Hall of Famer in many regards, state, local, national, and far more importantly, he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. You'll find that out starting next on Kansas City Profiles, presented by Easton Roofing. We're here with Joe Spiker, the president of Easton Roofing. And Joe, you worked for other companies in the construction industry. What inspired you to start your own company in Easton Roofing?
Well, you know, Danny, when you are working for somebody else, you oftentimes don't get to see the project through from beginning to end, and you don't get the final control over the customer experience. And I wanted to build a place where people can come and get work done on their house and not have to worry about being treated the wrong way and get a good customer service experience start to finish.
The company slogan is "Where Integrity Matters." Why is that so particularly important to you?
Well, for us, what that means is treating each other with respect at work, treating our clients with respect, and making the right choice, especially when no one's looking. So when you're presented all the time as a contractor with choices that have to be made, are you going to make more money on this if you cut a corner? And we just wanted to make a place and a slogan that said to our people and to whoever is our customer, we're not going to do that. We're going to make the right choice regardless of profit.
Easton Roofing, where integrity matters. I've been doobed, and you should be next. Yes, Doob, D-O-O-B. It's the keepsake of a lifetime, a 3D-generated, incredibly lifelike figurine. I just had one done of me. 66 cameras take an image at exactly the same moment in any pose, and state-of-the-art 3D technology transforms that into exact replicas of you, anyone you know or love, a pet, whomever is close to your heart. Create lifetime memories with a Doob. Visit their Facebook page at Doob 3D Kansas City, or better yet, see their incredible creations at their store on 119th Street in La Paloma Plaza near the Cheesecake Factory. Doob, be next. Get a refreshing change of your expectations of a sports bar and restaurant at the 23rd Street Brewery in Lawrence. Matt Llewellyn's welcoming spot at Clinton Parkway and Cassold covers all the bases, like their own handcrafted beers and all the televisions you need for great sports viewing. But it's the large, varied, and delicious menu that stands apart. From a favorite of mine like the awesome ahi tuna appetizer to great sandwiches, outstanding pizza, and truly fantastic entrees, the 23rd Street Brewery has it all. Matt and his friendly staff make it that much more enjoyable. Food until 10, fun until late. The 23rd Street Brewery is a can't-miss stop when you are in Lawrence. Bob, we've been working on getting together for quite a while now. It's a pleasure to finally get to do it, and to sit down with you is a thrill. You've always been somebody who's fun to be around and a mentor of sorts, somebody who can actually tell jokes and make them funny. Most people who tell jokes aren't funny, really. They just tell jokes. Oh. But you're a funny person and a great joke teller. So
well, looks aren't everything.
Those are both of those great things.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And and you have one of my favorite lines, which I use over and over and over again. When we'd see each other and there was a medium meal and it was maybe less than spectacular, Bob Davis would always say, I say, Bob, how's the food? And you'd say, well, I'm not as hungry as I was before.
Yeah, and I kind of remember that.
I used that line many, many times. So it's a pleasure to talk to you. And let's just start out at the beginning. Well, not the very beginning. I was researching you, and I came upon many, many stories. And several of them said you were born in 1945, but one of them said you were born in 1944.
44 would be correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go. So it was maybe like a movie star who wanted to take a year
I
off.
don't know how that happened, but
No.
it was 44.
There you go.
My dad was in the Pacific at the time. He didn't see me until I was 18 months old.
Oh, wow.
So it was that stage of our history, but that's where it all started, in Iola, Kansas.
Right. So let's fast forward to when you might start having a few memories, actually. What was it like to be a young 6, 7, 8-year-old Bob Davis in a small town in Kansas? You lived in several different places. Were you still in Iola at that point?
No, we were in Independence, and my dad, at that time, he had sold shoes and worked in a department store, but he became the sports editor of the local newspaper. And he was really a pretty good writer. I've gone to the Historical Society and read a lot of his stuff. And he was able to cover junior college sports because we had Independence Community College, high school sports. Independence High School had great football over those years, and also minor league baseball, Class D, KOM League. And Mickey Mantle played there one year. Bill Verdon was one of my favorites. He played the next year, but I saw a lot of minor league baseball. In fact, all my baseballs in my collection up here, primarily from the KOM League and the Independence Yankees. But that was fun, going to a lot of ball games. And Dad even dabbled in radio a little bit with the station in Independence, did junior college football. So I was kind of around it and thought, hey, this is fun.
Was that the reason that you were a little bit transient? You lived in Independence, Topeka, Manhattan, Hayes. Why did that play out that way?
Well, Dad changed jobs, got in the insurance business, and took a job in Manhattan. We were there a couple of years, my 5th and 6th grade years. So I was a big K-State fan. We could walk to a Hearn Field House in those days. Guys in the neighborhood, little 5th graders, would you do this now? Walk to a Hearn Field House. We could get in for 50 cents. And watch Tex Winter coach Jack Parr and Bob Boozer and all those great teams in massive Hearn Field House. That was really, really a great time.
That does sound like a great time. And what was what as a youth, were you somebody who participated in sports a lot, or just went to games, or what was it like?
Well, I wasn't a great athlete, but I did participate in sports, and I went to a lot of games, and I loved listening. At that time, it was games on the radio. To television, the game of the week was about it. But I listened to Dev Nelson and all the guys that did doing the K-State games, and all the guys through the years at KU, Merle Harmon and Bill Grigsby and Monty Moore and Tom Hedrick and all those guys, most of whom became friends.
Right.
And thought, what a great life that would be to cover the games and broadcast. I had a cousin who was in radio. He was a few years older, and he worked in Topeka for a while. He was a rock and roll disc jockey in those days, where they talked like that. And I told him I'd like to get in radio and be a sportscaster. And he said, you're climbing on a dead horse. Well, in the 60s, there was kind of a sports explosion, and broadcasting sports became a pretty good deal. And that's what I decided I wanted to do at a fairly early age, like in 8th grade. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but I'm going to be a broadcaster and specifically a sportscaster.
So you mentioned your dad switched careers a couple of times.
Yeah.
So what was your relationship like with your parents, and did you have siblings, and where did you stack up in that?
Well, I had one sibling. We were 15 years apart. I was the oldest. My parents always joked that they had 2 only children, which was kind of the case. Unfortunately, we lost my brother to cancer a few years ago. He was my little guy, and we were very close, and it was a really tragic situation. In fact, he got a law degree and was working in state government. His son lives in Toronto, Canada, and is a barrister up there. So it's kind of interesting how that worked out. But Jim was really a great guy. I really miss him even today. But growing up, Mom and Dad, it was just the 3 of us for a long time until Jim arrived, and then I graduated from high school in '62 and went into college, and somehow I got to figure out how this radio thing's going to work, because that's the only thing I'm considering.
Right. When was your dad? Was it sort of standard 9 to 5, Ozzie and Harriet type of life, or was Dad gone a lot, and did you have to lean on your mom a lot? What was that like?
He sold life insurance for a period of time. I was oftentimes gone in the evening. But, I guess I hadn't thought of Ozzie and Harriet, but which would I be, David or Ricky? I guess I
don't know.
I couldn't sing like Ricky. I remember Ozzie and Harriet on radio.
Wow.
I was in the generation, and you kind of missed this, where we listened to the radio in the evenings. We didn't have television until the mid-'50s probably, and all those great shows were on the radio. I even listened to the Mutual Game of the Day with Al Helfer. some of those great announcers. So I'm a radio guy. I think a lot of people in the business now, particularly in the sports aspect, are TV people. They grew up with TV,
Right.
they think TV, but I've always appreciated the radio and the descriptive aspect of that. We have some guys now, I won't name anybody, but we have guys that have only done television.
Right.
And when they get on radio, they say, you don't want to do radio on television. That's too much talking. Well, we've got some guys running around now that do television on radio.
You know, when that really tends to happen is like Westwood One, when they will boil it down from the first round, where they pretty much use guys who are really familiar with radio, Gary Cohen and people like that, and then they want the bigger names. So by the time you get to the regional finals, you get some guys who really have only done television, and you can tell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the radio aspect to describe where the ball is, who has the ball, what's the score. That was great training. My first radio job, I did like 50 basketball games a year, 20-some football games, and a lot of baseball games as well, plus everything else that you do around a radio and TV station.
Well, you may find this surprising, but I've heard all those. My favorite channel on satellite radio actually is the Old Time Radio channel, and I listen to it all the time. I especially do like the detective stories and things like that. I don't like the comedies as much as some other people or the science fiction ones, but I have a great love for radio too, and I grew up in radio stations, so that was great. One thing that when you were finishing up high school, what was the decision-making process as far as where you thought you wanted to go to college, and whether you're weighing other options? You ended up going to Washburn.
I went to Washburn where I was living in Topeka. It was certainly a fine college, and a lot of my friends were there, but it was affordable, and that kind of how that worked out. Washburn had a law school there as well. My dad really wanted me to go to law school. I said my brother got a law degree. I went 1 year. We had draft deferments then. I don't know if you remember that, but my deferment ran out after the 5th year. And I told Dad, Dad, I'm going to get in a reserve unit. And when I get back from basic training and AIT, I'm going to figure this radio thing out, and I'm going to give it a try, because if I don't, I'll always regret it. And so I did. And he said, okay. One of my early football broadcasts was a game in Omaha, Nebraska. Fort Hays played Nebraska-Omaha, and Dad went with me. I said, you can be my spotter. We'll do this. And, because he had a little feel for that and liked ball games. And after we got done with the broadcast, I was wrapping things up, and I turned to him after I said goodbye, and I said, well, what do you think, sports writer? I'm done. And he said, well, I guess this is about right for you. I never knew if that was a compliment or not.
Now, when you first started in researching this at KAYS, is that correct? You really weren't doing any sports. Is that correct? You were doing sort of everything but sports at the start.
I was hired to do a board shift, be a DJ, for 3 hours in the afternoon. I did the noon news on radio, and then I ran TV camera for the 6 o'clock news, and then my best deal, I got to do the 10 o'clock sports. We had a guy who was our sports and news director, and he was really good. He did all the ball games, and he did the news director stuff, and he was looking for another job. I started out there in August, and in late October, mid to late October, he got a job in Lansing, Michigan. So he's leaving. All of a sudden, there's nobody in the station who can do the ball games, and we've got an election coming up. It was the 1968 presidential election. So I got thrown into some stuff. I said, I'd like to try to do the ball game. So that's part of the story. But our guy who was our production manager and kind of assistant news director, he and I did the election coverage. And
coverage, I've done election coverage, and it's kind of like doing sports.
Absolutely. You got winners and losers.
Winners and losers, scores. You have to, basically ad-lib what's the action.
We did it on TV, and we had like 23 minutes in each half hour that CBS covered,
right.
And then we did the other 7, and then we sent it back to Walter Cronkite, and then we do another 23. But it was a big year because 68, it was Nixon and Humphrey,
right.
Big presidential election. Bob Dole, who was from Russell near Hayes, my wife's hometown, he was running for Senate for the first time. Keith Sebelius, who had been a state senator, was running for Dole's 1st district. And all those guys came through,
right.
TV station. It was really a learning experience. And to do that election coverage was, being thrown into the deep end of the pool. But it was fun. I loved it.
Yeah, I very much enjoyed it, too. And it is kind of like doing sports. You're dealing with numbers and things like that. Well, you just mentioned your wife, and right. I know that